Okay, Singapore. Singapore, you hear that name, and I bet you just picture gleaming skyscrapers, right? And amazing food, but oh, also that little thing about it being, well, expensive, pretty pricey, to say the least. So if you've ever been curious about just how pricey it really is, down to like what you'd actually be spending each day, well, you're in the right place.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
We're going to do a deep dive today into the cost of living in Singapore. We've got all the numbers, all the data. We're really going to look at daily life there. And our goal today is to give you a way better picture than just, oh, Singapore's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. We're going way beyond those vague notions. Today, we are going to break down everything that makes up your monthly budget. Everything, from where you live to what you'd eat. So we're going to look at the realities of housing and rental prices, of course. Then we'll dive into getting around the city. And then, of course, what you can expect to spend on food, healthcare, those utilities, and even how much you might want to set aside just to have some fun. So are you ready to see what those Singapore dollars and cents could really mean for you? I think we should dive in.
Let's get into it. Let's start with one of your probably biggest expenses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Housing. Singapore. It's got a really unique housing market, don't you think? You've got public housing, those HDD flats, and then the private housing.
For sure. And the type of place you choose, and maybe even more importantly, where it is going to have a massive impact on what you spend every month. Just looking at the numbers for renting really tells the story. Okay, so it's 2024 right now. And to rent a 4-room HDB unit, I mean, you're looking at anywhere from about 3,000 Singapore dollars to 4,400 per month. And like you'd probably guess, the central region is where you find those higher prices.
And then you've got condos. If you're thinking about a one-bedroom condo in that same core central region, we call it the CCR, well, you could be looking at rent from about $4,500 all the way up to $7,000. Move a little outside of that into what we call the rest of the central region, or RCR. Those one-bedroom condo rentals might come down a bit. Maybe it's like $3,500 to $5,500. Then go even further out to the outside central region, that's OCR, and you might find a one-bedroom condo from $2,500 to $4,000. And of course, if you need more space, 2 or 3 bedrooms, well, those prices, they're going to go up. Probably a lot.
Yeah, you've also got more than just the HDBs and condos. You've got what they call landed properties. So that's like your houses and bungalows, the fancy stuff. And those are generally the priciest option. And then you've got those service departments. Those can be really convenient if you're just there for a bit, short stays. But as a long-term thing, yeah, they get pretty expensive. Oh, and recently co-living spaces have become more popular. Those are sort of in between, right? You get your own room, but then you share some common areas.
That's true. So this brings up a good question, right? If you're thinking, okay, I want to move to Singapore, how do you even find a place that's affordable? Well, we've got some strategies for you. One of the best things you can do is to look outside the city center. The rents usually go down the further out you go. And Singapore's public transport, it's really efficient, so commuting isn't that bad for a lot of people.
That's a good point. Public transport really is fantastic there. And, if you can swing it, having roommates can make a huge difference in how much rent you pay. And this might seem obvious, but don't be afraid to negotiate. Try to negotiate that rent, especially if the place has been available for a while. Oh, and definitely check out some online portals. There's Property Guru and 99.co. Those will be super helpful. Just spend some time on those sites, get a feel for what's out there.
And be flexible. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Do you absolutely need a balcony? Or could you maybe handle a slightly smaller place? Being open to giving up some of those extras that you don't really need can save you some serious cash. But I'll be honest, finding a place could be tough. It's competitive, and rents have gone up quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
You've got to be ready to move fast.
All right, so we've talked about where you might live. Now, how about getting around? Singapore's public transport is awesome. Everyone says so. You agree, right?
Oh, look, the MRT and the buses, they're everywhere and super efficient. And here's a little tip. Get an Easy Link card. It's a card you can use on all the public transport, and it's way cheaper than buying individual tickets. It's not a huge thing, but it does add up over time.
Which is a total opposite, by the way, of owning a car. I mean, the stuff we read for this episode, it's shocking how expensive it is to own a car there. And it's not just the price of the car itself. Oh, no, it's all the fees on top of that. You've got what they call an additional registration fee. So that's ARF. Then there's something called the excise duty. And the certificate of entitlement, that's COE, and then there's this vehicle emissions scheme, or VES. All of these add up to this crazy upfront cost. And that COE thing, it's like a bidding system where you're basically bidding for the right to own a car for like a certain amount of time. And because there are only so many COEs available, it drives the price way up.
And, if you take a step back, it's clear why they do this. It's all about managing traffic in a city that's packed with people. And then, on top of the crazy cost of buying the car, you've got the day-to-day expenses, right? Petrol, parking, and then there's this electronic road pricing. They call it ERP. So yeah, with all that, public transport starts looking pretty good, both for your wallet and for how easy it is to get around.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about that. And it is great that they're also encouraging biking and walking. I mean, it is a super healthy and cheap way to get around, especially for short trips. And they've actually been putting in a lot of new bike lanes to make it safer, too.
What strikes you about this big price difference between using public transport and having your own car?
It really shows you how Singapore's policies shape the way people live. I mean, their public transport is so well designed and pretty affordable, while owning a car is, well, it's made super expensive on purpose. It's a trade-off for sure. But, okay, let's move on to another daily essential. Food. What can you expect when you're at the grocery store?
So our research says that Singapore might not be the absolute cheapest for groceries, but it's definitely doable. I mean, you can always make choices that affect how much you spend, right?
Right.
Choosing those local brands instead of the imported ones can help. And always look for sales. Stores like NTUC, Fair Price, and Cold Storage, those are good ones to check.
And we found some prices for common grocery items, which I think is really helpful. Like how much is milk? How much is bread? Rice, eggs, cheese, chicken. It even listed apples. It's interesting they pointed out how much cheaper the local brands are compared to imported stuff. That's a good tip right there for saving some money at the store.
Yeah, for sure. And eating out. Singapore's got it all. You can grab a casual meal for around 14 Singapore dollars, or you could splurge, go to a nice restaurant and easily spend over $100 for two people. And fast food, yeah, they have that too. A McMeal will cost you about $10.
But if you want to save money, the real winners are the hawker centers. The sources were raving about those.
Yeah, you've got to try those hawker centers. For you, they're not just a cheap place to grab a bite. I mean, they're like a big part of Singaporean culture. You can get a whole meal for under $5. And there's so much to choose from. Chicken rice, laksa, char kway teow, so many options. It's a great way to try some local food without breaking the bank.
So it's affordable, delicious, and cultural. What more could you ask for? All right, let's shift gears a bit. From food to staying healthy, let's talk healthcare and insurance.
Singapore has a really good healthcare system. But what you need to know is the difference between public and private healthcare. Public healthcare is subsidized a lot for citizens and permanent residents. They've got these national schemes like MediShield Life. It's a basic health insurance that helps cover the big hospital bills and some outpatient treatments. But if you're not a citizen or a permanent resident, well, usually you go the private healthcare route. But it's going to cost you more.
And those costs can add up fast. We found some average prices, like around $100 for a quick visit with a private doctor. And then there's the cost of medicine, like basic stuff, cold medicine, antibiotics, even things like physiotherapy can get expensive.
So yeah, having health insurance is really important,
Yeah.
especially if you're not eligible for those government subsidies. There are a few options. You've got what they call integrated shield plans. Those are private insurance plans. They add extra coverage on top of the MediShield Life. So you can go to private hospitals and usually have higher claim limits. And then you've got international health insurance. That might cover you anywhere in the world. And a lot of these insurance companies let you add on stuff like dental and maternity coverage too.
Sounds like if you're thinking about living in Singapore and you're not a citizen or permanent resident, figuring out health insurance is pretty important. Now, onto those bills that keep your home running, utilities.
Yep. Utilities. Those are definitely part of your monthly budget. Electricity and water, it all depends on how much you use, of course. And living in that Singapore climate, let me tell you, using the AC can really bump up your electricity bill.
Yeah, no kidding. And then there's internet and your mobile phone. Singapore's got great internet, but just like everything else, the faster speeds and more data you want, well, the more you'll pay. We've got some example prices in our research for those basic internet services, then those high-speed fiber connections, and then phone plans with data. The best advice: shop around, really compare prices.
There's some good budgeting tips in there too. Track how much energy and water you're using. Maybe try one of those budgeting apps. And when you buy appliances, go for the energy efficient ones. All of this can save you money over time. Oh, and don't forget those little things like garbage collection. That adds up too.
Yeah, and they had this table that summarized average utility costs, which I think is super helpful. They said you're probably looking at $150 to $250 total for electricity, water, and garbage collection. Then add on like $50 to $80 for fiber internet and 30 to 60 for your mobile plan. So that gives you a good idea of what to expect. All right, so we've covered the essentials. Now let's talk about the fun stuff. Well, or at least how much the fun stuff will cost you, entertainment and leisure.
Exactly. Singapore's got tons of stuff to do, but, it's not free. A movie ticket, that'll be about $13. And if you're into working out, a gym membership, yeah, that's going to run you somewhere between $155 and $195 a month. Even just renting a tennis court for an hour will cost you.
And then you've got all the restaurants and the nightlife. As we talked about earlier, going out can get pricey depending on where you go. A casual dinner, sure. But if you add in drinks and entertainment, that bill climbs up fast.
Don't forget, though, there are also a ton of free and cheap things to do in Singapore. The botanic gardens are free, and they're amazing. And then there's this great hiking trail, the Southern Ridges. That's free, too. Plus, there are always free events happening at places like the Esplanade, so you don't have to spend a ton of money to have a good time.
Yeah, you've got options. It's about finding a balance,
Yeah.
right? Enjoying the city, but also being smart about your money. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the cost of living in Singapore, what are the biggest takeaways for our listeners? What do they need to know?
Bottom line, Singapore is expensive, especially when it comes to housing and just like daily life things. But it's definitely possible to live there. If you have a good salary, and this is key, if you budget and plan carefully.
Totally agree. You've got to keep track of your spending, especially on those big costs like rent and utilities. That's how you find that sweet spot. Living comfortably in Singapore and not feeling broke all the time.
Okay, so here's something to think about. We've thrown a lot of numbers at you, right? Rent, transport, food, entertainment. Think about how those costs compare to where you live now. What are you willing to adjust in your lifestyle, maybe? Would you live in a smaller place? Would you eat out less? What would you change to be able to live in Singapore? I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about what's most important to you.